My name is Oliver, and for as long as I can remember, my family has had a way of making me feel like I was more of a resource than a son, nephew, or brother. Not in the we love and support you, but lean on you sometimes kind of way. No, it was more like I was a walking wallet, a stand-in for responsibility that nobody else wanted to carry. But before I dive into all that, let me set the stage a little. I grew up in a household where appearances mattered more than actual care. My parents, let's call them Martin and Claudine, were the kind of people who wanted to be seen as generous, respectable pillars of the community, but behind closed doors, it was very different. They could pour endless praise and resources into my cousin Laila, who wasn't even their child, while acting as though my accomplishments were inconveniences that pulled attention away from her. And then there was my aunt, Mirielle, Layla's mother. Mirielle had this way of talking to me like I was a bank teller. No, how are you, Oliver? Or congratulations on your hard work. It was always framed as, here's what Laila needs. When can you provide it? For years, I tolerated it. Maybe it was because I didn't want to make waves, or maybe it was because I thought if I worked hard enough, my parents would finally look at me the way they looked at Laila, like I mattered. That illusion came crashing down on the day of my college graduation. I'd worked myself nearly sick to keep my grades up, pulling shifts at the campus library and tutoring to cover rent and food. It wasn't glamorous, but I was proud of the fact that I managed it all without taking a cent from them. In fact, I'd even managed to set aside a small savings. Nothing extraordinary, but for me, it was proof that I could stand on my own. The ceremony was supposed to be my moment. I'd been chosen as one of the students to speak at the event. I'd rehearsed that speech so many times, making sure every word honored the people who had supported me. Though if I'm being honest, those people weren't my parents or my aunt. They were professors, friends, and even my boss at the library who pushed me when I doubted myself. As I sat in the waiting area in my cap and gown, I kept glancing at my phone, expecting at least a good luck text. Nothing. When I finally walked across that stage, shook hands, and held my diploma, I scanned the audience. Row after row of proud families clapping, crying, cheering. And then there was the empty row where my family was supposed to be. I told myself maybe something had come up, traffic, work, an emergency. I didn't want to believe that they had just not shown up. Afterward, my friends' families invited me to their celebrations. Parents hugged their kids, siblings snapped photos. Entire tables at restaurants were reserved for these little parties. I politely declined the invitations, telling everyone I had my own plans. The truth was, I walked home alone with my diploma in one hand and my phone in the other, waiting. That's when it buzzed. A message from Aunt Mirielle. It wasn't congratulations. It wasn't even an acknowledgement that I had graduated. It was a blunt, almost business-like message. Oliver, I heard you've been saving from your library job. Layla's tuition bill came in higher than expected this semester. Since you don't have many expenses, it would make sense for you to contribute. Think of it as helping family. I'll send you the details. I just stood there on the sidewalk staring at the screen. Not one word about my achievement. Not even a call. My parents hadn't said a thing all day, but suddenly, when it came to my cousin's tuition, the family could reach out. The anger didn't come all at once. It crept in slowly, almost like a heavy blanket wrapping tighter around me the longer I stared at those words. I didn't respond. I shoved the phone in my pocket and kept walking, but that message burned in my head. That night, I finally called my parents, half hoping they'd at least have an explanation. My father answered, his tone distracted, like I'd interrupted something more important. Oliver, you know your aunt worries a lot about Layla's future, he said when I brought up the message. You're doing well for yourself, son. You don't need much. She's under a lot of pressure with tuition. I reminded him, calmly, that it was my graduation day, that I'd walked across the stage, given a speech, and not a single member of my family had shown up. There was a long pause, and then my mother chimed in. Her voice was sharper, cutting. Oliver, stop making this about you. We can't attend everything. Layla has real responsibilities. Her education is expensive. You should be proud to help. I think that was the moment something broke inside me. I hung up without another word, staring at the ceiling of my tiny apartment that night. The diploma sat on the desk, still in its leather cover, but instead of pride, I felt this sinking realization that no matter what I did, no matter how hard I worked, they would never see me as more than a backup plan for Layla. And that was when I decided I wasn't going to play their game anymore. I didn't reply to Mirielle's message, but I started to think about all the years I'd been dismissed, minimized, and treated like a resource. Every dinner where my achievements were brushed aside, so Layla's recital could be the focus. Every family gathering where my questions about internships or projects were met with half-hearted nods before the conversation turned back to her. I didn't answer Mirielle's message. I didn't send a single word, not even a passive-aggressive, "Thanks for remembering my graduation." I thought that maybe silence would say more than any reply could. But silence in my family doesn't last long. 2 days later, I got a call from my cousin Laila herself. I almost didn't pick up, but curiosity got the better of me. She launched straight into it. No greeting, no acknowledgement. "Oliver, Aunt Mirielle told me you've been saving. She said you'd help out with my tuition this semester. Did you send the money yet?" I stood in my kitchen holding the phone, my free hand tightening into a fist on the counter. She said it so casually, like I was a bank app she could just refresh. "No," I said slowly, careful not to let the anger leak into my tone. I didn't agree to that. There was a pause, then a laugh that wasn't really a laugh, more like a sharp exhale of disbelief. "Come on, Oliver. You don't have any real expenses. You live in some tiny apartment. What do you even need savings for? I'm in college. This is serious." The irony nearly made me choke. I wanted to remind her that I had just finished college, that I'd paid my way through it, that no one had lifted a finger to help me. But I knew it wouldn't matter. So I just said, "I'm not giving you my savings, Laila." Her voice dropped lower, the kind of tone she used when she thought she was being reasonable, but every word was dipped in entitlement. "So you're just going to let me struggle? After all the times my mom and your parents have done things for you?" I thought about that carefully. What exactly had they done for me? Yes, they gave me food and a roof when I was a kid. But love? Encouragement? Showing up when it mattered? No. When I published my first paper, when I won a departmental award, when I got accepted into the honors program, they were always busy. But the moment Laila needed something, the world stopped spinning until she was taken care of. "I don't owe you anything," I said finally, and before she could respond, I ended the call. That silence, that finality, hung in the air for days. But it didn't stay quiet for long. A week later, I got an invitation, or rather, a demand, to attend a family dinner at my parents' house. It wasn't framed as optional. My father sent me a brief message. "We're having dinner this weekend. Everyone will be here. You need to come." Part of me wanted to ignore it, to stay in my apartment, cook myself a simple meal, and never look back. But another part of me knew I had to go. Not because I wanted reconciliation. No, that hope was long gone. But because I needed to see them, face to face, and make it clear I wasn't playing the role they'd assigned me anymore. When Saturday came, I dressed plainly. Nothing flashy, nothing that would give them an opening to comment. Just a simple shirt and dark pants. As I drove over, my stomach churned, not from nerves but from the weight of everything unspoken. Their house looked the same as always. White shutters, perfectly trimmed hedges, the same wreath on the door my mother refused to take down even in the off-season. It was almost eerie how little it had changed, while I felt like I'd lived an entire lifetime since I'd last stepped inside. The moment I walked through the door, the atmosphere was thick. Layla sat at the table already, her posture smug, scrolling on her phone. Mirielle was beside her, speaking animatedly with my mother about some fundraiser. My father sat at the head of the table, newspaper folded neatly beside his plate, his expression neutral but expectant. "Oliver," my mother said, her tone cool. "You're late." "I'm here," I replied simply, pulling out a chair. We ate in strained silence at first. My father made small talk about the weather, about the neighborhood. My mother mentioned some family friend's promotion. None of it was directed at me. It was like I was sitting in the middle of a performance where my lines had been erased. Finally, Mirielle broke the silence. "Oliver, we've been meaning to discuss something important with you." Her smile was polite, but her eyes were sharp. "Layla's tuition has gone up this semester. We all think it would be fair for you to help contribute. After all, you're working now. You don't have a family of your own to provide for. It makes sense that you'd support your cousin while she finishes her degree." There it was. No preamble, no acknowledgement of my achievements. Just straight to the demand. I set down my fork carefully. "I'm not giving Laila my savings." The room went quiet, save for the clinking of Layla's spoon against her glass. She looked up, eyes wide with mock innocence. "Why not? You know I need this. You're really going to sit there, and let me struggle when you have the means to help. You're not struggling, I said calmly. You have your mother. You have my parents. You've always had support. I've had to make it on my own. And now that I've finally built something for myself, you all think I should hand it over. My mother's eyes narrowed. Oliver, don't exaggerate. We've done plenty for you. But family means sacrifice. You've always been the practical one. Layla's future is brighter if we all pitch in. You don't want to be the reason she falls behind, do you? The way she said it, like it would be my fault if Layla didn't succeed, made my blood run cold. For years, I'd swallowed their words. Let them convince me I was selfish for wanting recognition, for wanting even a fraction of the attention poured into Layla. But something inside me hardened that night. I leaned back in my chair, meeting each of their gazes. I'm not responsible for Layla. I'm not her parent. I've worked for everything I have, and I won't apologize for keeping what I've earned. The table erupted. Layla scoffed loudly. Mirielle shook her head like I'd just confessed to a crime, and my mother's voice rose, sharp and shrill. Oliver, you're being dramatic. No one is asking you to give up everything, just what you don't need. Stop making this harder than it has to be. My father stayed quiet, but the look in his eyes wasn't neutral anymore. It was disappointment, like I'd failed some unspoken test. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I let the silence stretch, let them sit with the weight of what I wasn't saying. For the first time in my life, I wasn't bending, wasn't giving them what they wanted. But then, Mirielle leaned forward, her voice dripping with condescension. Oliver, if you can't be convinced with reason, maybe you need to be reminded. After all, without this family, where would you be? You owe us more than you realize. The clinking of silverware had stopped completely by now. Nobody was eating. The food sat cooling on the table, untouched, while every pair of eyes seemed to dig into me. Mirielle leaned closer, her voice softer now, but in that calculated way people lower their tone when they think it makes them sound reasonable. Oliver, listen to me. I know you think you've struggled, but everything you've managed to do, it's because you had this family behind you. You had a home to grow up in. You had food on the table. Without us, you wouldn't be where you are. Don't forget that. It was such a rehearsed line, I almost laughed. Yes, I had a roof. Yes, I had food. But warmth? Support? Encouragement? I couldn't remember a single moment in my childhood where I wasn't either dismissed or compared unfavorably to someone else. Usually Layla. I thought back to my high school graduation, years earlier. That day, I'd walked across the stage too. I hadn't graduated top of my class, but I'd worked hard enough to earn a scholarship. I came home with the certificate, excited to show them. My mother barely glanced at it before asking if I'd remembered to take out the trash. My father gave me a distracted, good job, before turning back to the TV. And then, less than an hour later, Mirielle arrived at the house, beaming with pride over Layla's piano recital. Everyone gathered in the living room, clapping for her as she played a short piece, while my scholarship letter sat on the kitchen counter, forgotten. I swallowed hard and looked back at Mirielle now, sitting smugly across from me. You're right, I said slowly. I wouldn't be where I am without this family. Because every time you dismissed me, every time you made it clear that I wasn't the one worth investing in, I learned how to rely on myself. I learned how to push through without anyone's help. That's why I am where I am. Not because of you, but in spite of you. For a second, silence hung over the table like heavy smoke. My father's jaw tightened. My mother's eyes flashed. Layla set her spoon down with a clink, her lips curling into a mockery of a smile. Wow, Layla said, tilting her head. So ungrateful. You act like you've been abandoned in the streets. You've had everything you needed. You just can't stand that I'm the one who got attention. That's what this is really about, isn't it? Jealousy. Jealousy. That word was like a knife twisting. I turned to her. Layla, I'm not jealous of you. I pity you. You've never had to do anything on your own. Everything has been handed to you. Money, opportunities, attention. The moment you face even the slightest difficulty, you expect someone else to fix it. That's not something to envy. That's something to fear for your future. Her face darkened, and she turned to her mother for backup. Mirielle immediately jumped in, her tone cutting. Oliver, don't you dare speak to my daughter like that. She's accomplished more than you could ever dream of. She's talented, gifted, and destined for great things. The least you could do, if you really cared about family, is support her in reaching her potential. I took a slow breath. My hands rested on the edge of the table, steady, even though my heart was hammering. I've supported myself for years. No one offered me help when I couldn't afford textbooks. No one showed up when I was working 2 jobs and barely sleeping. But now, suddenly, because I've managed to save a little, you all think it's fair game to take it? That's not family. That's exploitation. My mother's voice cut in sharply. Stop being dramatic, Oliver. We're not asking for everything. Just a contribution. Something to show that you care about this family. You don't want to be remembered as the selfish one, do you? There it was again. The guilt, the manipulation, the rewriting of reality. My mother had a talent for it. She could twist words until you questioned your own memory. As a kid, I believed her every time. But tonight, sitting at that table, I felt the weight of years of manipulation lifting one layer at a time. I looked at her, really looked at her. If caring about this family means sacrificing myself so that Laila never has to face reality, then maybe being selfish is better. The air in the room shifted. My father finally spoke, his voice low but stern. Oliver, that's enough. You're crossing a line. We've given you more than you realize. You will contribute, and that's final. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a command, delivered in the same tone he used when I was a kid, and he told me to finish my chores before bed. Except now, I wasn't a kid. I leaned forward slightly, my eyes locked on his. No, I won't. The way my father's expression hardened sent a chill down my spine. It wasn't anger, exactly. It was something colder. Disappointment mixed with calculation, like he was already thinking of the next step to get me back under control. My mother started speaking over me, her voice rising. Do you realize what you're doing? You're humiliating us in front of your aunt and cousin. You're making yourself look ungrateful. All we're asking is for you to step up for your family. That's what good sons do. Good sons. I repeated softly, almost to myself. The phrase hung there, bitter on my tongue. Good sons obey. Good sons don't question. Good sons sacrifice everything, even their own dignity, for the family image. I thought of the times I'd overheard my parents bragging about Laila to neighbors, calling her like another daughter to us, while my name was never mentioned. I thought of sitting alone in my dorm room while everyone else went home for holidays, because my parents said they were too busy, but then I'd see pictures of them at Mirielle's table, smiling, plates full of food. A part of me wanted to stand up right then, to walk out and never look back. But another part of me, deeper, quieter, knew that if I did that now, they'd twist the story. They'd say I stormed off, that I was unstable, selfish, ungrateful. They would spin it until I was the villain, and everyone else would nod along. No, if I was going to walk away, I had to do it on my terms. And they needed to see me do it. So instead of leaving, I sat back, calm, composed, and let the silence stretch. I let them see that I wasn't breaking under the weight of their guilt. Finally, Mirielle spoke again, her voice dripping with disdain. Oliver, if you really want to prove you're not selfish, you'll show it tonight. Transfer the money. Right now? Then we can all put this ugliness behind us and move on as a family. Every head at the table turned to me, waiting. My father with his cold stare, my mother with her narrowed eyes, Laila with her expectant smirk, and Mirielle with her false patience. I could feel the moment tightening, winding like a spring about to snap. And that's when I realized this wasn't just about saying no anymore. It was about showing them that I was no longer theirs to control. I looked at each of them in turn, letting the silence grow heavier, until the weight of it was almost unbearable. Then I said, quietly but firmly, you want me to give up what I've worked for? Fine. But if we're going to talk about sacrifices, then let's finally put everything on the table. The tension in the room was almost tangible. My parents, my aunt, and Laila were all staring at me like I'd grown a second head overnight. Mirielle's eyes narrowed, trying to figure out what I was planning, but I didn't give her a clue. I just leaned back, letting the silence drag, and watched the unease grow. I had spent years being overlooked, dismissed, treated as a source of convenience rather than a person. Tonight, that would end. I wasn't going to just say no to them. I was going to make them face the consequences of every insult, every dismissal, every ounce of control they thought they had over me. Everything on the table, I repeated slowly. Let's start with what this family has cost me over the years. Not just money, but time, opportunity, recognition. Every award, every scholarship, every achievement that was ignored, every bit of work I did to stand on my own while you all celebrated someone else. It counts. And you're about to see just how much. Layla's smirk faltered slightly. Mirielle blinked, caught off guard. My mother's face hardened, and my father's jaw tightened, as if he were preparing for some kind of battle. I'll start with the scholarships, I said, pulling a folder from my bag. Every award, every recognition, every internship I earned, none of it was acknowledged by you. But you think that because I've saved a little money, it's fair game for tuition bills that aren't mine. Let's be clear. I've spent years earning what I have, and not once did any of you help me. So if you're going to ask for contributions, maybe it's time to account for what you've actually taken from me. Mirielle opened her mouth, but I cut her off. Don't. This isn't about arguing. This is about facts. Let's start with the first summer job I had at 15. I wanted to buy a computer for school, so I took a part-time job. My parents, doubted I'd last a week. Layla got a new piano the same summer. That's your comparison, isn't it? My effort versus her gift. That pattern continued every year. I could see the anger growing on Layla's face. That's not fair. You're twisting things, she protested. Twisting? I'm stating facts, I said. Let's move on. High school. I applied for every scholarship I could find, worked weekends, stayed up nights. Your response? My awards were nice, but insignificant. Meanwhile, Layla got praised for every recital, every minor achievement, even when she needed no effort at all. Did you ever come to one of my award ceremonies? No. Did you show up for my science fair? No. Did you even ask how I was managing? No. But now, suddenly, I should hand over my savings to her because her mother says so? My father's jaw clenched. My mother's fingers twisted the napkin on her lap, knuckles white. For the first time in years, I saw a crack in their composure. And you know what's worse? I continued, voice steady, cold but controlled. Even when I succeeded despite you, you tried to use it against me. Oliver, you're lucky. If it weren't for our guidance, you'd be nowhere. Like I needed you to survive. Like my effort meant nothing on its own. Mirielle opened her mouth, flustered. Oliver, no, I said, holding up a hand. I'm not finished. Now let's talk about money. Layla's tuition bill. You've been trying to manipulate me into handing it over, acting like it's my moral duty. But you know what? I've calculated everything. Every cent I've saved, every cent I've invested. And I realized that if I follow your demands, I'm giving you leverage again. And I'm done letting you control me. I pulled out another folder, bank statements, receipts, pay stubs, everything I had meticulously saved over years. I placed them on the table. This is my money. I earned it. Not through handouts, not through favors, not by being part of your endless cycle of favoritism. And yet, here you are, expecting it because you think being related to me gives you a right. You want to manipulate me? You want to guilt me into sacrificing my future for Layla? Fine. Let's see what happens when the roles are reversed. Layla's face turned red, but it was Mirielle and my parents who were paling. Their carefully curated authority was crumbling, and they could feel it. You see, I continued, I've been patient, thinking I could make this work without drama. But you've been relentless in taking from me, in dismissing me, in expecting me to bow down and serve your narrative. So here's what I'm going to do. You want me to give you money? No. Instead, you're going to see the consequences of your entitlement. My mother opened her mouth, trembling now, voice raised. Oliver, I've already transferred part of my savings, I said, finally, letting a small smirk slip, but not to Layla. I've invested it in a company, an online business I started months ago. And guess who it happens to directly compete with? The silence was immediate. Layla froze, fork halfway to her mouth. Mirielle's lips pressed tightly together, eyes narrowing as if trying to figure out whether I was bluffing. My father leaned forward, his expression unreadable but tense, and my mother's hand flew to her mouth. This business, I said, letting the words sink in slowly, is something I've been building quietly, outside of your interference, and it's designed to outperform every small venture you've ever bragged about. Every time you dismissed me, every time you compared me to Layla or others, I learned what not to do. I studied every flaw, every weakness in the way you manage things. And now, those lessons are paying off. Literally. Mirielle's voice shook. Oliver, you can't. Oh, I can, I interrupted gently. And I will. Because if you think I'm giving in now, if you think you can manipulate me into handing over money or obedience, you are sorely mistaken. You wanted to play the game of entitlement? Fine. You'll see what it looks like when I take control for once. and you won't be able to spin it, twist it, or manipulate it away. At that moment, the room's atmosphere changed entirely. My family, for the first time in my life, looked unsettled, uncertain. Their confidence, their sense of control over me, evaporated in an instant. They could no longer assume I would bend to their demands. And that's when Layla, finally, made the first mistake. "Wait, you're saying," she stammered, voice cracking, "you're competing with us?" I leaned back, letting the weight of my calm sink into the room like a tide. "Yes, Layla, I am. And from now on, every time you try to claim entitlement over what is mine, you'll see exactly what that means." The stunned silence that followed wasn't polite or ceremonial. It was the kind of silence that makes people feel exposed, vulnerable, unsure if the next moment will bring disaster. My parents' mouths moved, then closed. Mirielle's fingers twisted the edge of the tablecloth as her eyes darted between Layla and me. The tension in the dining room was thick enough to slice through. For years, I had let my family's words, their dismissals, and their expectations sit unchallenged, quietly accumulating into a simmering resentment. Tonight, though, I wasn't just saying no. I was taking control, and they could feel it. Layla's voice wavered. You mean your business?" I let the words hang in the air. Yes, my business. Something I had been building quietly for months, learning from every mistake I'd witnessed in my family and studying what actually worked in the real world. Small enough to be invisible to them, strategic enough to compete directly with their ventures. Everything they had mocked, everything they had minimized about me, had led to this. "Yes," I said, calm, deliberate. "My business. And it's thriving." Mirielle's composure cracked first. Her mouth opened and closed, no words coming out, her face pale. That's impossible," she said finally, disbelief dripping from every syllable. "I've been careful," I continued. "I've invested my savings wisely, grown it quietly, and built something that doesn't rely on anyone else's permission or interference. And yes, it competes directly with the family ventures you all rely on so heavily. Everything you mocked me for, every time you ignored my hard work, it's what taught me how to succeed. And now, you'll see what it looks like to underestimate me." My father shifted in his seat, suddenly uncomfortable, a subtle sign that he could no longer control the narrative. My mother's face hardened, the familiar pride and smugness replaced by tension. Layla, once so self-assured, was visibly shaken. "You, you'll ruin everything," my mother spat finally. "I already have," I replied, letting the truth settle slowly. "I'm not giving you money. I'm not handing over my savings. But I am taking something far more permanent: respect, leverage, and proof that I am no longer yours to manipulate. Every time you try to guilt me or dictate what I do, the consequences now fall on you. I've set things in motion that ensure that the games end tonight." And they did. Over the next few weeks, the impact of my business moves became clear. I had quietly taken steps to absorb clients and partnerships that had previously been loyal to my family's small ventures. Mirielle's consulting business struggled as I introduced more efficient services, undersold their offerings without sacrificing quality, and gained traction among key clients who had been loyal to them for years. Layla's supposed future in business suddenly looked shaky as contracts she thought were secure began to shift to my company. When I finally met with my parents again, the change in the air was unmistakable. They were angry, yes, but the anger was tinged with fear. Fear that the control they had wielded over me for so long had finally slipped. You've gone too far," my father said, voice tight. "I've gone exactly far enough," I replied. "You wanted to control my choices, my money, my future. I've merely shown you that control is an illusion when it's not earned. I didn't need your support to succeed, but I knew exactly how to turn your weaknesses into my advantage. That's what I've done." My mother attempted another argument, but I cut her off. "No apologies, no explanations. I've been patient for years while you treated me like a resource. That ends today. Layla gets nothing from me. Mirielle, your business is faltering because of your own mistakes, not mine. And you, my parents, will no longer dictate my life under the guise of love or family duty. That's the reality." Layla stormed off, furious, slamming the door behind her. Mirielle followed, muttering indignantly about unfair tactics and betrayal. My parents were left sitting at the table, stunned, speechless. The family empire of manipulation they had built around me had crumbled, and they had only themselves to blame. Weeks later, I had secured my position entirely. My savings remained mine, my business thrived, and I had finally severed the financial and emotional leash my family had always tried to keep on me. Layla was forced to scramble for tuition funds without any help from me. Mirielle's reputation among our extended network suffered, as word spread of how she had tried to manipulate me. My parents faced the undeniable truth. I was no longer their puppet, and the illusion of family control they had relied on for decades was gone. I moved on with my life, calmer, stronger, and entirely independent. I never forgave them, and I never needed to. They had shown their true colors long ago, and the events of that dinner and the weeks that followed had finally made it impossible to ignore. I had reclaimed my power, and more importantly, my dignity. The house remained theirs. The family dinners continued without me, and Layla's voice no longer carried any weight over my life. I had finally stepped out of the shadow of entitlement, and nothing they could do would drag me back. In the end, I had everything I had ever worked for: control over my own life, the respect I deserved, and proof that hard work and patience could overcome even the most toxic of family dynamics. They remained villains in the story, and I remained unbroken, standing firmly on my own. Thanks for watching. Share your thoughts in the comments. If you like this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more content like this.